Hey, yo, Seth.
The fuck?
Scumpy is a legend in the COD scene. He's known, formerly as OpTic Scump, but what if he never came back to OpTic in COD Ghosts? Today, we're going over the what if in COD history of if OpTic Scump never came back to OpTic Gaming in 2014. When you first hear the question, maybe it doesn't sound like that big of a deal. Like, okay, what's the big deal? He came back to OpTic, right? So there are a lot of people who were affected by the small stint of Scump leaving OpTic Gaming. If you're not aware of the story, back in the beginning of 2014 at UMG Philadelphia, it actually was going to be Big Timer's last event on OpTic Gaming. He announced his retirement, announced that this was going to be his last event going into the weekend.
But I have decided that UMG Philadelphia is going to be the last tournament in my competing career. And
so Scump, Nadeshot, Big T, and Ricky headed into UMG Philadelphia knowing they were going to have to replace Big Timer after this event. A big task already, but they ended up falling very, very, very short. They finished top 12 at the event. Going into the event, they were feeling really, really good. They felt like they had a chance to win the event, and it did not go their way whatsoever. And Scump fully tilted. He was pissed. If you guys haven't seen all the videos of him talking about this, I can maybe link a few of them in the description down below. But basically, Scump full tilted. He didn't talk to anyone the whole night on the way back to Chicago. They get back to Chicago and he leaves. He just packs up his stuff, drives 10 hours home without anybody knowing in the middle of the night. So Scump leaves the team, joins Envy, and a lot of people are affected. Nadeshot, Ricky, Big Timer, Rambo, Proofy, Merc, Goonjar. So there's just like so many names that are affected by this, and even longer term, you can kind of stat it out, like what happens in these situations. So let's just start with the full breakdown of what went down, what actually happened, and then we can go through some of the what ifs, like what would have happened if Scump would have never came back to OpTic Gaming in 2014. So let's talk about what actually went down. So at UMG Philadelphia, they were actually eliminated by Elevate, which was, interestingly enough, Slasher and Attach, a very young Attach's team.
Now he's going to challenge me. This is interesting. Go up. Could in fact lead the two players directly to his right. Goes in for the no, it's not there. Where's he at?
He's on the outside.
He's like,
I mean, this was baby Attached. After that elimination again, Scump flipped. He lost it. He didn't talk to anyone. Full tilt, went home. All right. So he talked to Hastro in the lobby of the hotel and agreed to join their roster with Merc, Proofy, and Goonjar.
It is your boy Scumpy. No more OpTic in front of that. We're going to be discussing that a little bit today. I'm going to be giving you the reasons, a couple of things that I was unhappy with, and we're just going to give you the rundown of what actually happened. So, like I said, not on OpTic Gaming anymore. I got up and left, and yes, I did leave. I went to Team Envious with Proofy, Merc, and Goonjar as Rambo as the coach, and I think it's going to be a really solid squad.
But because Scump joined them, OpTic, captained by Nadeshot, had to pick up players. So again, Big T retired. He was already playing on that before Scump left, and now Scump's gone. So Nadeshot only has Ricky, and they have to pick up more players. So Nadeshot, the captain of OpTic, had to pick up someone. So he actually ended up picking up Clayster and Parasite to replace Big T and Scump. So the roster was now Nade, Ricky, Clay, and Parasite. So Clayster was actually coming from teaming with Sharp, Theory, and Neslo, who had just gotten second at the tournament at UMG Philadelphia. So they were coming off a really successful tournament, and Clayster hopped off that team to join Nadeshot on OpTic Gaming, which is a pretty big step. But after that first 2K that weekend, they didn't like how they played. Dito and Embos replaced Ricky and Parasite. So they dropped Ricky, who was the only guy remaining from the previous squad, and then they dropped Parasite, who they literally just picked up a week before, for Dito and Embos. So this is when Money B finally joins OpTic Gaming because Scump left.
What's going on, YouTube? Embos back with another video for you guys, and today I'm going to be talking about my team situation. As you can see by the header, the title, whatever, I am now a part of OpTic Gaming. Late last night, decided to depart from the FaZe competitive team. It was just a decision I decided to make along with Saints.
And Embos was actually teaming with Spacely, Saint, and Sinful at UMG Philly, where they actually got 6. So a pretty decent finish for them. They were a pretty young squad at the time. So that was actually a pretty solid finish for them as a squad. And Embos was feeling pretty good, finally on OpTic Gaming. And Dito, who getting his shot at a big roster like OpTic for the first time, though a week later, Scump would want back onto the team, and they dropped Dito to pick up Scump again. Of course, that means that Scump had to leave Envy to join OpTic again. So Merc, again the captain of Envy at the time, picked up Rambo once again, and then he picked up Nameless and Study, who actually would go on to play the season pretty well, and they played out the season together as a squad. So fast forwarding like 5 months after Scump rejoins OpTic, OpTic gets third at Champs.
The question is, if you're out there on social, are you TK all day? With Formal the Slayer there, you've got Sharp. Look at Sharp. Give a there it is. Goonjar, yes, the Canadian player, and then Theory as well. So what an amazing team in Team Caliber. But now they've got to go against definitely the North American darling team in OpTic Gaming. After facing a tough loss against Epsilon, they've got to bounce back against a very tough team in TK. As you've got Nadeshot, Clayster, and that slow camera pan. There's Scumpy right there. Yeah, Scump, get a big smile in there. There it is. And Embos as well. So OpTic Gaming versus TK.
They got beat by, you know, what is Complexity's Dynasty in the winners finals, and then lost and eliminated by Envy, Merc, Nameless, Rambo, and Study. So check out this interview from Merc right after beating them. He was really pumped to kind of stick it to him because Merc was on OpTic's roster before. Then they got dropped, joined Envy, and then Scump joined from OpTic. Then Scump turned his back on Merc, dropped him again, and so there was that whole fiasco. So this was a really big win for Merc. Let's check out what he said.
I mean, this was a huge game for you.
It was so important. I got third place last year with that team. They dropped me this year, and I outdid them. That's what I wanted to do. So we're in the finals now, and I'm just so excited.
I mean, not only for you, I mean, this is obviously you want to win, but I mean, going up against OpTic, I mean, you've got a little bit of revenge here.
Oh, absolutely. We beat them in regionals. We beat them here. I'm sure they miss me.
I'm sure they do too.
To keep moving forward, after that event, they dropped Embos for Proofy, and Embos was given the OpTic Nation team, which he ended up picking up Killa, Miracles, and Ricky, and he played on that with OpTic Nation. And then in June, the MLG X Games came along, which is the legendary moment in OpTic Gaming, in OpTic's career, Nadeshot's career, Scump, Proofy, Clayster. They won MLG X Games. Obviously, I mean, just roll the clip.
And he can't plant now. He can't plant now. He doesn't have enough time to plant. So he's got to get the kill. Gujar's got to find Clayster. Clayster's going to look. And he gets the kill. And OpTic Gaming wins it. OpTic Gaming, your X Games gold medal champions.
What a performance here from OpTic. They will take the first ever MLG X Games gold.
Wow, what a
historic
search
moment.
game. That was the best search game I've seen in such a long time. Team Caliber, an amazing play by them. They played tremendous. You guys have to give it up for Team Caliber too.
It's my first MLG event that I ever won. I'm so happy that I won it with these guys. Ever since I watched Halo 2 as a young kid on MLG, I dreamed about winning an MLG event. And for this to finally happen, plus a gold medal at the X Games, it's literally a dream come true.
So they win the X Games, and that team would stick together until the end of the game, until Advanced Warfare came out, where they would then drop Clayster and Proofy for Crimsix and Formal. That would create the beginning of the OpTic Dynasty roster. And then, of course, Nadeshot would stay on the team until COD Champs, where he then retired, and they would pick up Karma to create the OpTic Dynasty that would stay together until COD World War II. And then, of course, Nadeshot, still really popular, creating YouTube videos all these years based off his popularity from the COD scene, would then go on to create 100T, and now we're in the present times. Nadeshot, 100T, OpTic Gaming, and Chicago Huntsman. So what would have happened if Scump would have left OpTic and never came back? I think it would have had a massive effect on the legacies of so many players, how the COD League would have gone down, and the past basically 5 or 6 years of competitive COD as a whole. Let's assume that Scump leaves OpTic, joins Envy, and at the least never returns to OpTic Gaming until Nadeshot retires, because that was the big rift, was the relationship between Scump and Nadeshot. And fortunately, they were able to mend that relationship. But let's assume in this scenario, it was very likely that he would never come back. And I remember back in the day, I was devastated when Scump left Nadeshot. I was a big Nadeshot fan especially, and I knew it made a big difference for how good OpTic could potentially be. So in this scenario, he's at least not coming back to OpTic until Nadeshot retires. So now in this scenario, Scump is playing with Merc, Proofy, and Gunjar on Envy. Rambo would have still been dropped, which is unfortunate for Rambo. That really sucks, and he wouldn't have gotten repicked up. So that means Proofy wouldn't have joined OpTic Gaming. You know, Scump wouldn't have been there on OpTic Gaming. Nameless and Study wouldn't have ended up on Envy because that roster probably would have stayed together with Merc, Proofy, Gunjar, and Scump. I mean, that would have been a really good team back in COD Ghosts. They were all really good players back then, and likely it would have been a very successful squad long term. So Big T is still retiring because he announced his retirement before the event anyway. So that probably means that Nadeshot is still picking up Clayster, the captain of OpTic, picking up Clayster and Parasite, you know. And then, like I said, Dito and Embos joined the squad to replace Parasite and Ricky. So now the squad was set. It was Nade, Clay, Embos, and Dito. So the question really is, would Dito have stayed on the roster if Scump would have never came back? And I mean, it's hard to say because Dito's career never really took off after COD Ghosts. He could never really find his spot in the pro league or, you know, on a pro team long term. So you'd have to assume at least Dito would have been on the roster for at least a little bit, maybe for an event, maybe two, up until the middle of spring, maybe. And then they might have started flipping through more teammates, and who knows how far it could have gone. You'd have to assume that likely their roster wouldn't have been nearly as good as it would have been with Scump. I mean, Scump ended up being one of the best players in Ghosts. It would have been hard to replace a guy like that with anyone at the time. So you fast forward to COD Champs. It's hard to say that OpTic would have gotten 3rd place at COD Champs without Scump. They even got beat by Envy without Scump at Champs that year, so who would have known what would have happened? Nadeshot probably wouldn't have gotten 3rd at Champs. And then you move forward to the X Games. And Embos probably doesn't get dropped for Proofy because Proofy would have been staying on Envy. So that means Embos is still on the roster. OpTic Nation would have never existed. Killa, Miracles, Ricky would have never joined OpTic Nation to team with Embos. Embos probably would have stayed on the roster, but would he have won? We don't know. And then for Nadeshot, Clay, Scump's career, like who knows what happens at the X Games. Likely OpTic Gaming doesn't win it, which means that Nadeshot, Clayster, they don't have X Games gold medals, so that would drastically affect their legacy. They may have never won an event in COD Ghosts, which would have really affected their legacy moving forward. They beat the Cole Dynasty 3-1 at X Games, and then they beat TK in the finals 3-2, so like that probably just wouldn't have happened. I mean, if they're not winning events, they're probably making roster changes. Like who knows how long Clay would have stayed on the roster without the win at X Games, or whether or not he would have stayed on during Advanced Warfare. And without Scump being there, likely Crim and Formal would have never joined OpTic Gaming, so Nadeshot wouldn't have had the wins early on and the success early on in Advanced Warfare for his career. So where would Nadeshot be right now? It's hard to say, but likely not as popular or as successful or as well remembered as he would have been if Scump would have never come back. Scump, who knows? I mean, the OpTic Dynasty may have never happened if Scump would have never came back to OpTic Gaming. You know, that could have completely changed the landscape. Imagine if OpTic Dynasty didn't exist. There would have been so many more champions, so many more great teams. Maybe Crim, Formal, and Karma find their way onto a different team. The Complexity Dynasty maybe stays together and they dominate long term. Who knows? Likely the OpTic Dynasty would have never existed. Competitive COD would have been completely different. And Scump returning to OpTic was a pivotal moment in the history of competitive COD that changed the landscape of so many players' careers and the COD scene as a whole. And it literally is crazy looking back at it and seeing how much it affects. So I hope you guys enjoyed this look back into the competitive COD history. If you guys did, like, comment, favorite, subscribe. I really do appreciate that. And if you guys want to see more videos like this, more what ifs, I would love to do them and would love your support on them as well. So like the video, that all does mean a lot, and I really do appreciate it. So as always, guys, I'm your boy SalvationsElite, and we'll see you next time. I'm out.